All right, and we are live today. We're talking to Shannon Rugani, aka Empress, which is cool.
Yeah.
I want to get into that name.
Cool.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm thrilled that you're here today, and I get to talk to you. And you have a lot of different things going on. So, can we just go back? You were a professional dancer.
Yeah. Yeah. I was a ballerina for San Francisco Ballet for 12 years professionally, and 2 years in the school before that. So, and then, basically I crawled out of my mom's womb and started dancing right away. Like, you know.
How did you go from wanting to dance to becoming a professional dancer? That's a whole different ballgame.
Huge. Yeah. Well, I think, okay, so I grew up in a really small town with family. I was the oldest child of three. No one dances in my family at all. I mean, they do like a cute little step touch on the dance floor, but that was about the extent of my family's background in dancing. And I was the first child, so my parents were kind of like, okay, well, what do you do in a mountain town with a little girl? You sign them up for dance class, I guess, right? So it was kind of an experiment. I cried the entire first ballet class, and the teacher had to hold me the whole time. And she ended up just saying to my parents, she handed me back at the end of the class and said, she is not ready for this. Like, don't bring her back until she doesn't cry for an hour. So I always joke, I got kicked out of my first ballet class. But that didn't stop me. So a year later, the teacher actually remembered me. We were at the beach, and somehow she saw me and she goes, I remember you. You look old enough to take ballet class again. You should enroll her. And so my parents did. And from then on, like, I just haven't stopped dancing. And it was like a series of, we started a little Dolly Dinkle studio. One of the, teachers of the summer intensive comes and kind of saw me and asked if I like how old I was. I was 7 actually when I was put into the advanced class in that studio. So then I was the big fish in the little pond, and then you kind of just keep doing that until you end up in the ocean. And I ended up at 14 being told to audition for a summer intensive for San Francisco Ballet School. And I ended up getting a full scholarship to go to their summer intensive, which was a huge deal because I grew up in South Lake Tahoe, California. So there's never been and probably won't be another ballerina coming from like a town where everybody's skiers in my family and tennis players. And so of course we took it, full scholarship. So I went, and then they offered me a year-round scholarship to come back and train with the school. And then almost a year later, I got a job. It was, a lot of hard work, a lot of foot cramps, a lot of tears, a lot of blood on my, it's a really, I'm making it sound super easy. It's not, but it seems now looking back in hindsight, 2020, it's like, it definitely, there's a path that I took and it worked. So not complaining.
How do you manage being a professional dancer and you're still going to school, like regular
Oh
school?
yeah. Actually my mom, she decided to homeschool me. She had a couple friends in Tahoe that had children that were really just cool kids apparently. And I don't really know them. I know that they babysat me when I was really little, but my parents was really taken. They both were taken by these kids because they were very mature for their age. They could look at an adult's eyes and actually have a conversation at 6 and 7 years old, and then they grew up to be very mature kids. And so they were kind of really impressed by that. And my mom read a book. It was called Thomas Jefferson Education. And it was all about homeschooling. It kind of really, and another one, Homegrown Kids, that kind of just really got to her. And I don't think she ever really intended to homeschool me the whole time, but because I was homeschooled, I had more time to take private lessons, in ballet classes and extra things that other kids didn't have. They didn't have that time. Because when you're homeschooled, you can kind of like, fill in the gaps. If you have time in the evening, you do your school in the evening, instead of during the day or something. So for me anyways, I just kept going with the homeschooling thing because it actually enhanced my training with dance and all of the other things that I did. I took piano lessons, and we had tennis and skiing, and like all the normal kid stuff, but we were homeschooled. My brother and sister were homeschooled until they went to high school, and my sister I think went to middle school and all the way up. But yeah, so I was homeschooled, and when I moved to San Francisco I was 14. So I was still homeschooling, and at that point I was getting really good at teaching myself kind of things, so it was, I don't know, it's an interesting thing that I think a lot of kids are dealing with these days with this new kind of shelter in place. They're all being homeschooled essentially, and you kind of become a teacher to yourself in a way. So it's interesting.
This is no disparagement to schools, but I always felt like I learned a lot more not in school.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing because at least for me, I did not really have any formal school experience, and so, but from my perspective on it all, and I my brother and sister went to school, and they loved it because they had sports and they had friends and they had all these things, but really everyone always was worried that we wouldn't be like good at people skills, and like we'd be that weird kid that doesn't know how to talk to people. And my parents really like took it upon themselves to make sure that we were reading like self-help books at young ages of like how to win friends and influence people, and like things, so that we weren't like a totally weird kid. And I think that helps balance out being home all the time. But really what I was interested in was I never felt like I was left out of anything, because like I would always be 110% wherever I was. It was like if I'm at ballet class, I don't have a million other things that I'm thinking about. I'm just focused on ballet class. If I'm doing my schoolwork, I don't have anyone else to impress. There's no peer pressure. It's just me, and I get to learn at my own rate. And so certain subjects was a much faster thing. I was really good at math, so I could just breeze through. And if I wanted to keep going, I was doing like college math and, at the age of like 11 or something, just because I liked it and I wanted to keep going. And there was no peer pressure of telling me that it wasn't okay, or that I couldn't, move on because we had to wait for someone else to catch up. Or so for me anyways, it was really cool. And of course there's things that I was not good at, like spelling. And I was like, a 2-year-old speller at the age of 11. So, there's, there's that. Thank God for a spell check these days. But, it was very good for me. My experience of homeschooling was awesome. My mom was really into it. So, and we had lots of tutors, so she wasn't alone. And it was an awesome experience in my opinion. And I know a lot of parents just don't have time for that. And so I'm grateful that my mom was kind of able to give us 110%, as well.
Nice. And so music was a part of your life, even at that time. So you were involved in a lot of things.
I feel like it's a full circle. Now I'm a singer-songwriter, but it was always that was always kind of the reason why I even danced, was because of the music. It was like, you hear music as a kid, and most kids will do a little jig. I mean, I could not sit still. If I was listening to a soundtrack, it could be in the background of a TV show, or, that Disney film where you're like they sing and dance with you. I couldn't not move to that. And there was this like thing inside of me that every time I heard music, it was just so inspiring. And as a dancer, I almost sometimes, the teachers would ask us to do something, and I couldn't do it unless there was music. It was the weirdest thing. And I remember realizing that one day. I was like, kept trying this turn and I kept falling, and the teacher finally was like, well, just try it with the music. So we did it with the music and I was fine. And she was like, yeah, I thought so. Like, there's something about the music with you, it's always tied in. So I started, playing piano when I was really little without lessons. So we had just got this piano from my great grandmother, and I just was doodling one day, and I had a really good ear for music. So I figured out how to play Happy Birthday for my mom, and she freaked out. She was like, who taught you how to do this? She was shocked. I thought she was mad, so I apologized with tears in my eyes. I'm like, I'm sorry, no one told me, no one taught me how to do this. I just learned by myself. And she's like, no, this is amazing. We're gonna get you lessons, and thankfully I found or she found this Mary Poppins, piano teacher who made learning the most fun thing in the whole world. It was all rainbows and butterflies, and she made it so fun to practice, which I think is that's the key ingredient to getting good at anything, is practicing. So she made it really fun to get good at something that you were already interested in. I think a lot of teachers can kind of suck the life out of you if they're just teaching their way. That's fine, but it doesn't necessarily always work for the student. And this teacher taught every student the way that they needed to be taught. And my sister was always really good at sight reading. I hated sight reading. So what she did was she knew I liked composing. So she taught me how to compose, and while doing so, I needed to learn how to sight read so that I could write down and understand my own, composition. So she taught us the same things. She just did it, in my language and my sister's language. So it was kind of exceptional that way,
Well, I played the saxophone, and I was in
Did
the band
you?
and the marching band and all that stuff. And
My favorite
when I was
instrument,
younger,
by the way.
I had the grumpiest music teacher in the world. He's since passed away, so sorry about that.
Oh, yeah.
But when I got into grade school and high school, all the teachers were amazing.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it really, that makes such a difference, I had one teacher too that she would show up on time, leave early. She was chewing nicotine gum with the blue eyeshadow, and she'd take over most of the piano seat. So you'd and she'd be like, play this. And I was like, I have an ear for music. If you play it first, then all of a sudden the music makes more sense. But, she taught her own way. I almost quit piano, and then we found the Mary Poppins teacher. So,
So you're professionally dancing.
Yeah.
Were you just, I don't want to say toying around with music, but while you're professionally dancing, were you just kind of doing music on the side for yourself?
Yeah. The coolest part about being in the ballet world is there's always a piano in the studio. And so when there's an empty studio, there's an empty piano, it's like a big piano room. So I always found my way down into the basement. They had all these in the opera house at San Francisco Ballet. They always have all of these rehearsal practice rooms for the symphony, and there's always a piano in those rooms. So if there was no one in those rooms, I'd just sneak in my tutu and start tinkling on the piano and making up music. But it was always for me anyway, my music and the composing, there's never any vocals to it. I never sang as a kid. I would play the piano, and so I'd compose on the piano, and so all of these things, and it was just like my way of releasing, like stress or energy or whatever. It was more of a venting, place, and it also recharged me as well. It was like my charging dock, So for so long I was only doing that, and then the story of how I found my voice was pretty fascinating, because we ended up having to audition in San Francisco Ballet for a singing role in a ballet, which never ever happens. We are a visual art form you are not seeing, and I'm so sorry. There's like road work right outside my window, so I'm so sorry.
I can hear it. You're good.
Good, great. But literally, we had this audition where we had to sing, and the entire company had to sing. I mean, this is the scariest thing a ballerina could ever do. We're very used to using our bodies to express our, artist art, but not our voice. And in fact, I was a loud ballerina. I was always constantly told to be quiet, like, Shannon, just stop talking. It's ballet rehearsal. Like, everyone's just, silent. So I was the loud one always. So go figure, I auditioned for this and I get the role. And I ended up doing this part, which was in West Side Story Suite. And it was the role of Anita, which is a sassy part. I always got the sassy parts after this. It was like the typecast, like the first role that you get, and then everyone's like, oh, she's good at that. Like, let's put her in all the sassy roles. So I ended up getting to do an opening night of West Side Story Suite in front of 3,500 people for the first time. I've never opened my mouth in my entire life, and now I'm singing in front of an opera house. It was the scariest thing I've ever done. And now everything, you know, from there, it's like, okay, you know, nothing will ever be that scary ever again. Breaking the silence in the ballet, it was not easy, but it was really cool because the audience could have reacted kind of like, what is happening? But they ended up screaming at the end. It was like a rock concert. Like that doesn't happen in an opera house where they do like golf claps, you know, maybe a whistle or a bravo or something, but stood up. I got a standing ovation. People were screaming like it was, you know, a big rock concert. And it was so great for, I mean, you know, my ego, really. It was a good ego boost. And so since then, you know, I broke that silence and now I can't shut up. So that's basically.
Well, I have a good question, but it was actually going to be at the end of this. Going from you're in a group dancing with a lot of other people.
Yeah.
And then you just said you're at the front singing.
Yeah.
Now you're really at the front singing.
Yeah.
How do you handle reviews and negative and positive feedback as far as being in a group and now by yourself?
Totally. Well, I mean, so far, knock on wood. I mean, I'm sure I'm going to get it at some point, but knock on wood, nobody's been really mean about my music. But honestly, after being in the ballet, I mean, they're so rough on you in the ballet. It's just, you almost become so used to getting criticism because they don't have time to give everybody compliments because everyone's so freaking talented in the ballet company. It's not like you were amazing. Oh, by the way, you know, your foot was a little crooked or whatever they call it, sickled in the ballet, you know, or you were out of line or something. They just go straight for the, like, you're out of line. This is what's wrong with that. I mean, pretty much everything's great, but they want to make it perfect. And so they focus on how to make it perfect in the ballet. I think that's a pretty good, kind way of putting it. But we're used to criticism all the time, you know. And so when you get into an audience, everyone's going to have their own opinions, but they all clap at the end. I mean, like, everybody claps at the end, so you feel good, like you did your job, and you can go home and sleep at night. You know, I did a Broadway show, and some people loved the show. Some people, you know, would say things about it that weren't like the most complimentary, but we'd laugh about it because it's still, you know, we're still doing a show and everyone deserves their own opinion. You know, they've earned the right to have their own opinion. Thank God we're in America, you know, and we have that right. It's great. And art is, people are going to look at the same piece of art. If you're in a room with 5 other people, there's going to be 5 different opinions of what they're seeing. And that's just part of what we do as artists, is that we put something out there and people can have their opinions, and so can you. You know, if you feel like you did a good job, then that should be enough for you to go home at night. You shouldn't be looking for other people's approval, you know. You know when you do a good job.
Advice. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
So how did you reinvent yourself to be Empress?
Empress was that was a fun transition, actually. So I went from the ballet, and then I did a brief, 2 years. I did a 2-year stint on Broadway in An American in Paris. And that was a really cool thing for me because it was the same. It was like, there was a lot of ballet in the Broadway show, but it was like a combo platter of ballet actors, Broadway performers, you know, just like opera singers. Like, we had a little bit of everything. And that really kind of opened up this whole new world for me, because it was going from like the silent performing arts world, the ballet, the perfection, the just classic nature of it, to like, gotta dance, you know, like jazz hands and loud things, and just being in a loud city with a lot of things going on in New York City, where like everything's always happening all at once, and being thrown into this very loud world. It was so empowering. It was like, wow, this is, I mean, I kind of felt like I was with my people. Like I was like that green alien in the ballet for so many years. And then all of a sudden I'm like, wait, everyone's a green alien here. This is awesome. Like I fit right in. And so I felt like that made me more confident in making noise. So like for me, the biggest thing was just like breaking the silence, even if, you know, even if you were good at it, it's still hard to do in the ballet. So and there's only one ballet that ever had singing in it. So it's not like I was doing it every day. You know, I did it once and then everybody knew I could sing, but you don't sing in a ballet. So it doesn't really help you that much. So going to Broadway opened up this whole nother world. And it made me feel like, I want more of this. I also felt this hunger and need as an artist to actually create. So when you're created on, you're basically like, essentially you're a canvas, or you can be the color too, but somebody else is painting it, you know, and somebody else is kind of creating something and you're a part of it, and you're maybe, you know, you feel like you're in control because you're the one doing it. You're the one physically doing the work. But somebody else, you're speaking someone else's words and you're wearing someone else's costumes. And I'm not trying to make this sound horrible. I love doing that. There's some freedom to not having to decide everything under the sun, like what you're wearing, what you're singing, what you're saying, you know, like just everything. There's a lot of pressure that goes along with that. But I was ready for that. I'd been in the performing arts for 15 years, and I kind of was ready to have a voice of my own. And so that kind of started me on this path and this journey of songwriting, which ended up turning into the most empowering experience for me as an artist. And that's how I came up with Empress, was because I actually felt like for the first time I was the ruler over my own life and the creator of my own happiness and my own art and my own everything. And I wanted to find a name that like embodied that wasn't like I'm ruling over someone else. This is just my experience. And so Empress, I couldn't believe the name Empress hasn't been taken. And I just had it like copywritten and trademarked and registered and like the whole thing. Like I still can't believe like that was the name out there. I mean, I thought about it for a long time. Like, I don't know, you know, if I want to even touch that. That's like a big name big shoes to fill, a big tiara to wear, you know, all the things. And then I realized that no, I want to empower others to feel the same way, because if I can do that from probably one of the most disciplined, you know, in a weird way, like suppressed kind of ballet world, if I can feel this empowered, like I could have felt that this whole time in the ballet. Like it took me so long to find that. And now I write music that inspires dancers that are dancing now to feel the way I feel. So it's like I'm kind of giving back to, you know, the old me in a way, and kind of reminding myself that I was always the empress over my own life, and I was always the ruler over my happiness. And, you know, it's like, anyway, it's been really fun creating Empress. I'll say that.
How has the music business been different than professional dancing?
Yeah, well, it's kind of the same, like in any industry. There's like the I want to say, with like there's just no other word that I can think of right now, but it's like the 1%ers, you know. There's definitely a group of people that are working constantly. Let's just put it that way. And I think that that's probably a good way of putting it, because it's the same in the ballet. There's really amazing dancers, but you know, they're maybe not always working. Same on Broadway. There's like only 900 performers on Broadway at any given time or something, but there's like, I mean, I've been to auditions where there's 7,000 people that show up for the same part. So it's like, you know, there's a lot of people that aren't working. So the people who are working in the music industry, you know, it's interesting, because there's, I guess, the difference that I noticed from the ballet, where everybody is super humble because everyone's amazing, and you can always be, you know, your worst competitor is actually yourself, because you can have a really good show one day and then you have a bad day and they take you out of the same part. I mean, it's like, you know, you have the ups and downs, and sometimes you're your own worst enemy it's not someone else backstabbing you to try and get your role. It's like you just didn't do a good enough job the next time you did it or something. It's every day you have to prove your worth, and there's no faking it. You can't fake ballet. I mean, you can't just walk in there and be like, I'm going to just be a ballerina. It's like, no, you just can't do that. And it doesn't matter how much money you have. If you're not good, you don't make it. On Broadway, you can kind of, and I love Broadway performing artists, don't take this wrong, but you can fake a lot of things on Broadway. It's just like, you got to be good at a lot of things. Whereas in the ballet, you have to be great at ballet. You know, you don't have to be a good singer. Like the fact that I was a good singer in the ballet doesn't really mean anything to the ballet unless I'm doing that show that night, you know? So, and I don't want to make this sound like, I don't want to sound like Betty Davis, like, let me tell you something, honey, you know, like this, I'm not a bitter Betty about it. This is just being as honest as possible about the performing arts. But in the music industry, I've noticed you can fake everything. I mean, it's a very different industry, and it does matter who's behind you and who's working with you. And so it really is all in who you know and the group of people that you put together to make the art, you know? And so for me anyways, the first couple years of getting into the music industry was just finding the team that I could trust, that I wanted to work with, that inspires me, and also the ones that are doing really amazing things in the music industry. So still building my team, of course, and I'm always excited to work with new people. But I have a group of people that are really incredible that are working with me, and I just feel really blessed to, you know, have found them. So
what's your biggest misconception of the music business now that you're in it?
I think it's almost more, it might not even be a misconception. It's almost refreshing in a way. It's like, okay, who you know, how much money you have to back you, you will be, and if you already have, don't get me wrong, you have to have talent, of course, but if you have those two things, if you have the talent, but then you have the team and the money to go to back you, I mean, the sky's the limit, really. So it's more refreshing in a way, because there's no other industry that you can really like fake it like this, you know, and you don't have to. I think the misconception that I've seen, I'm like, you don't have to sleep with people I'm married, I'm happily married. You don't have to sleep with people to get to the next level there. It's just, you know, it's very basic: money, the team, talent, and you're good, you know? And it's, yeah, it's kind of refreshing in a way. As an artist, I'm like, that's it. Okay, great. Awesome. Let's do this.
How's your husband been as far as a supporter for all your music?
So supportive. Like, I mean, let's just talk about this for a second. He let me, from San Francisco, he supported me to go to Broadway, and he went back and forth. He was a bi-coastal husband for over 3 years, and he would, because I was really, you know, in New York, I couldn't really leave. We have 1 day off a week, and we have 8 shows, and so it's a rough schedule. And so he was the one going back and forth and he never complained once. I mean, what an incredible man. He comes to every show. He's always so proud and excited, and I would say that he loves me more than what I do for a living, you know. So he just supports me as a woman, and it's really, I wouldn't have it any other way, but I'm living like with my Prince Charming for sure. Like, I definitely feel so blessed to have so much support in one man, you know. It's awesome.
That is awesome. That's cool. It's important too.
Yeah, I agree. It's so nice.
So obviously we're all kind of locked in the house with this pandemic.
Yeah.
Leading up to this, what were your plans for the music, and what has changed or temporarily been put on hold?
Well, it's interesting because I think the whole industry has been shaken up here. I love performing, and all of a sudden I think the performing arts is going to be hit potentially, you know, the hardest, because we rely on an audience, and audiences are not going to probably feel, and I'm not going to put words in anybody's mouth, but I think about like my father-in-law, who is turning 86 this week, and like, when am I going to feel comfortable having him in an auditorium, when with tons of other people? So I think it's going to be a while before that happens. And so I think the whole industry is shifting and changing. And I think for me anyway, I was excited about performing, and now that's kind of shifting a little bit more to potentially like virtual reality and finding ways to connect with audiences. I'm not really big on the living room concerts because I just don't feel like, I don't know, from the ballet world, we have such a high standard for quality. I don't feel like we found like a really great solution for entertainment yet. Unless it's maybe virtual reality where you can be immersed in it and people can be performing like at a level that they were proud of doing, instead of like, it's fun seeing people in their PJs for like, once or twice, but then, there's something about going to a concert that like, wow, we all experience it together, and there's something, there's something there that happens, and it's just more special when it's live. But there was recently a concert in virtual reality where 12.3 million people showed up, and at the same time, and so they all had this, co-experience, and I thought that was really cool because where else could you ever do that?
Mhm.
Where else can you get 12.3 million people in the same space? I mean, I don't know of anywhere. So I think that that's actually a really exciting new thing. I'm working on a couple of projects. They're like top secret, but I think virtual reality is definitely going to be a solution for the performing arts in this next chapter. And I also think too, the best way is, and for the performing arts that I'm, the old performing arts, the ballet, the opera, the symphony, the Broadway even, I think that there was no incentive for them to go online or to do anything, on the World Wide Web. And now all of a sudden everybody is kind of in the same predicament, and they're realizing they need to change. And so this wheel that was never going to stop or change all of a sudden had to change overnight, and nobody can take the blame for it. Nobody can take the credit for it. It has to happen, and it is happening. And I think that's a huge step in the right direction for the performing arts to actually not only join in on the 21st century, but to actually be a part of the creation finally. Because I think that needs, that's always been my passion, is like, technology meets the performing arts. They need to be hand in hand and create the future. Otherwise, we could easily replace the performing arts on accident.
Definitely. I think that one of the benefits is I've discovered, personally, so many new people, new music that I would have never seen. I'm like, wait,
Yeah.
why have I never heard of this person before?
Yeah.
This song is awesome.
It's an exciting time. It's like it's a new wild west of the music industry for sure.
Yeah.
And for me, I was going to do like music videos, and I had a few concerts lining up, and it was going to be fun to plan and do all this stuff. And now everything's kind of on hold. And I'm not sure. Everything in my life, at least, has happened for a reason, and they've always worked out to be the best. It was always the best case scenario, even if at the time, I couldn't see because it was too close to my, you like have no perception on like what is good and what is bad when it's too close to you. So I think that all of these things that are happening for the right reason. It wasn't the right time for me to release that song, or, whatever it is. And I'm writing new music, and I'm writing symphonies, and I'm doing all kinds of fun things. So using this time wisely, just preparing for the future when we're out of, when we're in the clear, I guess.
Yes. Your song, Lovely I Am, that's my favorite song, I would say.
Thanks. Thank you so much.
Could you tell me about writing that song? And also, it seems like you're still mixing the dancing in, which is cool.
Yeah.
So you can still do everything that you love in one.
Yeah. And thanks for saying that, actually, because that was my dream, was actually being able to do everything that I love to do in the performing arts. I mean, I'm not like doing a million other things outside, but like I'm not kicking a soccer ball or something too. I'm doing the performing arts, but in one place. It was like creating my empire of the ballet and Broadway and acting and dancing and blah, I'll sing all songwriting, all the things in one place, and not being typecast. Because like in the ballet, they or on Broadway, they call me prima ballerina, which I was like, first of all, I'm not a prima ballerina, but thank you. You know, I don't even think that's a real thing anymore. But and then you go back to the ballet and they'd be like, hey, Broadway star. And I was like, not really a Broadway star either. You know, it's just funny that you can't just be a ballerina when you're in the ballet or on the Broadway or in the Broadway. It was always like everyone always had like the you're always somewhere else kind of thing. And so for me, being able to do everything that I love to do all in one place and create this home for it is really like, that's the coolest thing ever. But Lovely I Am. First song that I wrote, took me forever to write it and rewrite it and continue doing that. But it was during this really tough time in the ballet for me. I was hired kind of as a girl, and then I turned into a woman, and my body changed, and I was being punished for, and I don't want to say punished, I want to say I was in a visual art form where that matters. Oh, you know, it's similar to like I would say being a model or something. It's like if you don't have the right body type, you don't get to work. And if that's what you love to do the most, which, you know, ballet was what I wanted to do, and then my body was like the reason why I couldn't do it. It was just really, it was a bummer, you know. And I'm grateful that I have so much like love around me from my family, and my friends, and Rob, my husband, loves me, and like, so I don't necessarily need the approval, but it was I didn't fit in with the other girls at this time, and I was so bummed, and I didn't know what to do, and I just felt like when I dance on stage, there's no mirrors. So like for me, I felt like I was the most beautiful person, and I was lovely, and just, you know, like I was, you know, just shining light. But on the outside, it was like I was being judged by how I looked, but on the inside, I felt beautiful. And I think when I really hit rock bottom, I was sitting in a tutu at a Nutcracker performance, and I went down to a little studio, you know, one of those rehearsal spaces that I was telling you about that the symphony rehearses in, and I found a piano, and this song just gushed out of me, like my, you know, fake eyelashes fell off, I was crying, it was like such a beautiful moment, and that's when the song was like born. Since then it's changed, you know, over the years, and I felt like I wrote it at rock bottom, but I finished it when I was Empress. So there's this like full circle thing of like Lovely I Am. Like I was always the same person on the inside. It was just the outside that people were seeing and projecting in different ways. It was like I may not seem warm or fuzzy on the outside, but inside I was like gushing with love, you know, or I might not seem pretty to you, but inside I am, you know, I'm like I'm beautiful on the inside, and that's what matters. And actually when I started changing my mindset on like, you know, instead of worrying about what I looked like on the outside and loving myself from the outside in, people started seeing me differently. All of a sudden, like I didn't lose weight, I didn't change, nothing really changed that much. And all of a sudden people started seeing me differently, like, oh, she is beautiful, and, you know, let's put her in this part and this role and stuff. And then everything sort of changed when I decided like I am lovely. This is who I am, and I don't know. It was a cool little butterfly moment, you know.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Again,
Anyway.
we're talking to Empress Shannon Rogani.
Thank you.
What other songs should we check out that you're proud of?
Yeah, I really love. I think everything that I put into the song kind of embodies what Empress is. But We Own This Crown is like one of those songs that when I wrote it, and I had a songwriting partner in New York that helped me write it as well, Alex Forbes. She's phenomenal and so just empowered as a woman. And so it was really fun to like sit down and write with her. We wrote this song and we were both like, oh my gosh, there's something to like the song wrote itself. We started off on a different path and then it just wrote itself. You know, it's like we weren't going to write a song about wearing your own crown and kind of creating your own happiness and being your own empress. But that happened, and it was that was one of the coolest songwriting experiences ever. Because it just felt like the song wrote itself. So "We Own This Crown" is a special one for me. Really like that.
How about the video process? Again, I go back to Lovely I Am.
Yeah.
I mean, that has to be fun for you because you were in a visual
Yeah.
performance artist, with dancing.
Yeah.
Now you can sing again, where you can do both things that you love the most. How is that whole process?
That was a really cool process. Well, first of all, I was focusing on my music for so long, and I was kind of teetering on, should I only just do one thing? Because I think doing too many things at once can be not only confusing for people. Sometimes they're like, well, what does she do? What is it? Ballet? Is it Broadway? Is it singing? Is it songwriting? What is it? And I wanted to be kind of like a little sensitive to that for so long, so I wasn't going to dance. And so yeah, that was it. I was just like, okay, Empress is going to just stand there and sing and maybe sit at the piano, and that's it. And then one day I was just like, wait, I'm creating this thing so that I can do all of these things, so I should dance in this music video. And so I decided to make a dance video and use my friends from San Francisco Ballet and do like a whole dance video. And it was really fun. I had to get into shape because I was going to dance next to my old colleagues, and I hadn't been in the company for a few years, so that took me a while. But it was not only exhausting physically, but like it was so exhilarating. It was like, I don't know, as a ballerina, we don't get filmed that often. It's like live performance, so it lives for the moment, and then it kind of dies off. But it was really cool to work on film as a ballerina and a singer-songwriter, because it documents and it like kind of freezes time in a way. And so it's a special memory that kind of gets saved in a lot of ways, where, like most of my career is a memory by people that were there that one night. It's like we share it, but it doesn't really live on physically or like in a place that everybody can see. And so it was special for me to be on around my good friends and kind of create this new memory.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Shannon, where can we find you? And Preston, if you're listening over there, could you put all her links below? That would be cool. Other than, I find you everywhere. I just searched for you and you're on YouTube. But if you could tell everybody, that would be great.
Yeah, that's awesome. My website, empress-music.com. You can find pretty much everything that you need there. But if you want to follow me on Instagram, that's my favorite of the social media platforms. It's empress.music. And I'm the same on Facebook. I think the only other difference is like Twitter, I had to do an underscore instead of the dot. So Empress_music. But yeah, that's Spotify. I'm on every platform. You can find me there. Yeah.
Last question for you. When you wake up in the morning, what's the perfect day to you?
Ooh, having a purpose. I think just waking up with anything, and it goes back to being homeschooled and like being focused at one thing at a time. Having a purpose, having an excited, like having a dream that you're working towards, I think is always important. And once you hit those milestones, celebrate them and then set a new dream or goal. And always kind of waking up with a purpose is, I think, the key to being like a childlike, soul of the world and kind of excited about life. Because I think if you lose that, bye. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So just waking up with a purpose, I think, whether that's singing, music, dance, whatever it is, enjoy your life.
Awesome. Shannon, I appreciate it. Everybody go check out her stuff. I wouldn't lead you in the wrong direction. She's
so
awesome.
Much. Gosh,
Thanks
it was
for
so
talking
lovely talking with you, and thank you so much for everything that you do as well.
Cool. Absolutely. Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Sounds great. Bye.